Greetings, welcome back to the Old Ways Rising Farm YouTube channel. Today we're going to do another tool maintenance and care video, and we're going to talk about scissors. Scissors are one of these things that we just kind of take for granted, right? It's just part of everyday life. You use them, you don't think about them. But think about them for a minute, right? This is such a marvelous tool. It lets you have so much precision in what you're doing. It's so much safer, both for your project and for yourself, than trying to cut things out with a knife. And it's just a marvelous tool, right? It's just a marvelous tool. And it's almost hard these days to get a decent pair of scissors. So let's talk about restoring some of the old ones. This is a box of scissors that I recently got on just an internet auction site. There's a lot of really good, really nice shears in here. There's, well, those aren't nice. Those are kind of junk. But the rest is nice. Those are good heavy-duty pinking shears. Keen cutters with a brass bolt. Those are some very old, well-made American shears. Right. This is a box of wonderful tools. They are toys, but tools that are of a quality that you're not going to be able to just go to the store and get easily today. There are a few people and places that are still making high quality shears, but they're very expensive and hard to come by. You're not just going to be able to go to a store in your local town and get them. So let's talk about restoring some of these old scissors. This whole box was something like 30 bucks, right? Not expensive. And there is so much potential in here for making things in a good way. Now, the pair that I was most excited and picked this particular auction to purchase was this one, because this is a really heavy-duty pair of shears for leather and canvas work, for heavy cutting. But if you look at them, there's a lot to talk about here in terms of problems. So if you look all the way out at the tip, right here, is this in view, hon? Mm-hmm. Okay. There's a nick out of it. Somebody, I believe, attacked this with a grinder. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. It could have been a manufacturing flaw that this pair slipped out of the jig, or it could have been somebody later on trying to sharpen them in a bad way. But whatever the case, you can see there's a little bit of deviation from what you would expect to be the true line of the scissors. Because of that, the tips don't meet up quite right. So again, I'm not sure if this was a manufacturer's second or somebody later on. We're going to need to fix that. They're pretty rust-free. We're not going to have to do much on the interface. The joint is solid. I'm not going to need to do much tightening or work on the screw. But the edge is duller than a butter knife. Okay, so we're going to need to address that. So I want to talk about, we're going to restore this pair of scissors, and in the process, learn about scissors in general. Now, when you look at these, if I open them up, the bottom loop on just about every pair of scissors, and definitely every pair of good scissors, this is at an angle. Okay? That's actually for a purpose. And that is because typically when these are made, this top arm is left soft so that it can be bent. That ramp allows you to adjust how the blades meet. So if you need the blades to come together tighter, you can bend this so it goes down the ramp. And if you need it to have more space, right? So if they're crossing over this way, so these are not meeting that way, but if they're crossing over this way, then you bend that up and go uphill so that they don't close quite as tightly. So that's the first modification we're going to do, and we're going to do that here in the vise. And we're going to clamp this loop between two pieces of wood. Okay. And now I want it to come this your right-hand side is the downhill, this is the uphill. So it needs to go, it needs to close more, so it needs to go downhill. So I'm going to very gently tweak that just a little bit.
Be very gentle.
Yes, yes indeed.
Don't want to break the things.
Gentle and careful. It's mostly closed. Better yet, take them out and we'll see how much progress we're making. You can see this is almost off the edge there, which is unfortunate, but it's very close to close at the tip. Okay, so because of that, I do think that that's a flaw that was ground in there, and people were just a little bit reluctant to make this modification to that extreme. But you can see now they're closing. So that's how you adjust the extent to which a pair of scissors is closing at the tip, is by moving it. You can see just how much I've moved that downhill, okay, by adjusting that. And these top arms on traditional old-fashioned scissors are made soft so that you can do what I just did. Right? Now, don't overbend them. You don't want to bend them back and forth and go crazy town on it, because you can work hard in them. And any additional modification to this, I'm kind of right at the edge of that ramp at all. So any additional modification, you could file down this nub a little bit, okay, to further adjust that. I'm not going to do that right now. I'm just going to go forward and work with these as they are. Now, the next thing that you need to know about scissors is that this interface is not flat. So if you hold a pair of scissors when they're closed up to the light, don't know if it's going to pick up in the camera here or not, but if you hold these up to the light and look right through, you'll always see an air gap in the middle. That's deliberate, okay? They need, as those jaws close, they need to touch and then push away like that in order to shear material correctly. They also have a propeller twist, a slight propeller twist, usually ground into them. It can also be bent into them if you're talking about old blacksmith-made scissors that would be polished flat and then bent as a last step right before hardening. Okay, they have a slight propeller twist bent or ground into them, which angles the blades toward each other. So as they close, the blades come in at that angle. So when you're sharpening a pair of scissors, you can't just unbolt this, take them to a flat stone and lap them flat. If you do that, you have ruined your pair of scissors. Okay? You also can't work on this edge. If I just take the tangle massage to show, you can't work on this edge like that, because then you'll have it's trying to come in, but now you carved a micro bevel going in the wrong direction. They will pinch and bind and they'll never work. So if you have rust in here that you need to clean up, the best thing to do is just take your thumb and a piece of sandpaper, very fine sandpaper, and just polish that a little bit on those inner faces and leave that inner edge pretty much alone. Okay. Now there isn't much to do on this pair. These are nice and clean. There are some in that box that are going to take a lot of polishing. And if it was really rusty, I would unscrew that, and then you can really get into the lever point where they meet there as well. I don't think that these really require that. Just going to give them a little bit of very light sanding. On the inside of these faces. Okay. Just enough so that they're smooth. Right, we really don't want to remove any appreciable quantity of metal on this interface. If you have pit rust in here or some sort of scar or damage that is going to force you to require large amounts of metal, you probably just need a new pair of scissors. Okay? But by the same token, we do want that smooth so that it's not catching and binding on the material that we're cutting. So those are the first two steps. Those went very, very quick on this, and they should go quick. This last one is going to take a little bit more time. This is not a view? Okay. Okay. And I'm just going to use this vise. I'm not going to put any pressure on this. I'm going to hold this jaw loose in my hand. But I'm going to use this vise just to be an extra hand to keep that from flapping around. And now we're going to work on the bevel. And this should be flat. So just find the angle. I'm using a soft Arkansas stone to start. And once you find that angle, you can take it and pinch it. Pinch it on the back here with your finger. And use that as a guide to maintain that angle. Now, I can see as I'm polishing this with this Arkansas stone, I'm not sure how much of it the camera is going to pick up because it's fine detail. But I'm hitting this edge and I'm hitting that edge. But in the middle, there's a whole lot of striations. Those are grinder marks. We don't like grinder marks. Grinders destroy good hand tools. Okay. Now, I'm not going to worry about getting out every last little grinder mark there. Especially since I already have a bit of a problem with these being able to close properly. But I want to work this until I can see from the glint on the edge that, clean my stone, that both edges have been worked completely. I'm also going to run my thumb sideways across it just to feel for a burr. And from a pair that has been this badly abused, it is going to take a while till I get to a place where I can feel that burr. Especially using such a fine stone to do the work. So I'm not going to bore you with a super long show and tell of me doing exactly what I'm doing on both jaws. I'm going to pause recording and I will come back when we go to the next stone. So if I run my finger up this blade, just like that, all the way along, I can feel just the tiniest hint of a little wire edge burr that is formed. Okay, so that says that we have worked the whole edge. I have most of, I'm trying to get the, don't worry, I'm not actually doing this on the edge. I'm just trying to swipe the dirty water off of it. But you can see a few dark spots here where there's still some grinder digs. And then a few speckles here where there's still some grinder digs in there. That's okay, right? We're not going to try and take every last bit of that out. I wish they weren't there in the first place. Don't use grinders to sharpen your good tools, please. You're just going to wreck stuff. Now, the next thing I want to do is take that little wire burr off. So I'm just going to take my stone. Again, this is still soft Arkansas. I'm just going to very carefully stroke it down. Now, like I said, we don't want to change the geometry of the steel in any way. Very, very light. All we're doing is taking off that little burr that we made from the first sharpening step. And it's gone. That's all it took. Okay? So now, when I test this, it is definitely sharper than it was when we started. Okay? Scissors don't need to be razor sharp the way a carving knife needs to be, because the angle of attack and the shearing action is very different, right? So it demands a different geometry. But we definitely want it very, very smooth and regular. So that was the soft Arkansas stone. Now I'm going to come and do exactly the same thing with a hard Arkansas stone. Now we're polishing. And I'm not going to do a whole lot of polishing. Just touch it up.
It sounds different from the first time.
Interesting thing about Arkansas stone, regardless of soft, hard, translucent, surgical black, they're all actually the same grit. Even though they do very different things to steel, they're all the same grit. It's all silica from, I think, sponge spicules, glass sponge. I think it was wind deposited. Have to double check that. Okay, so a little bit of polishing there with the hard Arkansas. But then silica cemented those sponge spicules together. And the difference isn't the grit size. The difference is how embedded it is in the silica matrix.
That makes sense.
So on the soft Arkansas, there's more airspace, so the grit is more exposed. Whereas in the hard, the black, and the translucent, it's more filled in, so the grit is less exposed. Because it's silica cemented with silica, it acts a lot like a modern ceramic stone. Brushing junk off the side there. Again, I know it can be a little hard to see detail in the camera. I promise I'm not running my fingers against that edge. And again, I can feel it's another step sharper. And I'm going to finish polishing with the black Arkansas, which is going to be glassier yet. And this, the black Arkansas and the translucent Arkansas, don't so much cut as burnish. Because these won't even absorb water. I mean, you can see the water beating up off of them. They're so solid, they won't absorb any water. So this is a final burnish. Keep that angle. Burnish along it. Okay. Make sure it's consistent. And you're not going to build much of a wire edge with these superfine stones, but when you're all done, do just a little final stropping. And again, I don't want to change the edge geometry, especially on the inside. Just enough grit in this black stone to do that. Okay. So that blade is done. Flip it over. Cycle, rinse, repeat. So there you have it. We have restored this pair of scissors. Now if you look at this bottom jaw, you can see that big dark spot. Is that showing up, beloved?
No.
No?
Not on the camera, no. Oh, there it goes. There it goes.
There it is?
Yeah.
There it is. Okay. Big dark spot right there. That's that grinder bite. And that's what was causing that extreme malocclusion at the tip of these. I did off camera do a little bit of filing right here. Just filed that down and then hit it with a little bit of sandpaper just to smooth it out and make it look nice. Okay. And that helped heal that malocclusion a little bit more. It's not perfect, and because this jaw is hardened, there's not a darn thing I can do about that nick there in the tip. Just gonna live with it. But its job is to cut, not to look pretty, so let's see if it cuts. This is just a scrap of leather from one of our recent leather projects, and if you see, I can just cut super fine, accurate ribbons of leather. And if you've ever cut leather with scissors, you know what I'm doing right now is a real test of sharpness. Okay? Right, you don't need to make like some of the sensational TV programs and baton your scissors into a granite boulder with a running chainsaw to test and see if it will cut. So, silliness aside, it will absolutely cut that little piece of leather thong into these really fine little pieces of confetti. So, I hope this is useful to you. Go find your grandmother's pair of scissors and sharpen them up, but don't be like Uncle Bubba did here and attack them with a grinder and destroy them. So you now know how to do it correctly. Respect these tools. These are really, really great, really, really important tools. Don't take them for granted. And if you've enjoyed this, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. It helps the algorithm know that you did, and show it to others. If you want to help support the channel, we have a Patreon. But either way, I hope that we'll see you next time here at Old Ways Rising Farm.